What's up, DBI? You know who I am, you know what I do. But this actually is a roleplay review for Yugen's Challenge. Or as it's written on the forums, Yugen's Challenges. Um, so I'm just going to get right into it. This is a short but very good, very insightful, very useful log for the continuation of Yugen's story. We haven't, and I don't think we haven't seen much of Yugen since his spar with Koshiro. So this is like a good chance and a good time for us to see him active on page again and kind of get caught up with his story. And I finally feel like this arc, the wolf, the tiger, and the bear, it seems to be kind of picking up, and parts are moving and stories are branching and things are happening kind of at the same time, which I hope at some point they converge back together and then branch off again. I do not think that this should be an overall arc that we are trying to get to and finish and be done with and it be over. I feel like this could be an ongoing, not even an arc, just an ongoing kind of episode or an ongoing kind of just story that we're telling with these three main characters, right? So Koshoro, Fusen, sorry, and Yugen. So I really hope that somewhere down the line that these guys can meet up again, have conflict, and then it branch off and they do their own things. But I did have some notes that I kind of wrote down today while I was on my lunch break at work, and that's what I'm going to be reading over here. But I want to say that this log, this episode, the story that we got from Yugen really feels like kind of a lament. We are kind of like in a, I won't say he's a sad boy, but I do feel sorrow in these words that he put on page. Um, yeah, it feels like there's like a little bit of brooding in it, especially how the way Yugen's saying in several ways that he hasn't found his place. He hasn't found his people, his pack. Um, and that kind of solidifies him in my eyes as the bear, because outside of their cubs that they raise, bears are pretty much, loner solitude creatures that really just kind of fight other bears that they may meet because they're very territorial. And it kind of really broke my heart a little bit. And maybe I'm reading too much into this. Maybe this is not at all what the writer intended, but that's definitely what I'm picking up on. And especially with this last pillar, and I don't know if it's something that I just now noticed, but really with him saying that he is the last pillar, I started thinking, and maybe I'm thinking too much into it, but what is a pillar, right? Like, it is the foundation of a building. You have these pillars; they hold up the rest of the building. And if he's the last one, if he's the last one of his school, then that means he's kind of carrying around this burden that if I don't do what I need to do, then this all collapses around me. Everything is gone. I'm the last one. And despite how we've never really seen him kind of sad and sorrowful, other than when he lost his master in the beginning of his story, um, he's remained kind of, forward thinking, and you never see him kind of have these thoughts. But I really feel like in this log it kind of slipped out. I really feel like he was, by himself and in his own head and just really thinking of like, you know, I came here and Koshoro kind of right away found his group of people, and he even mentions that he met up with some other group of people and they were doing their own thing and kind of, training together, and he just didn't feel like it was there. So he just kind of kept going on by himself. And he has this kind of like hidden mission that he hasn't mentioned to anybody. And it's like, well, what is that mission? We don't know. But yeah, I I really feel like you know, this is kind of it. This is who Yugen kind of really is when he's just by himself. And again, he might just be having a sad spell. Could be it. He might just feel lonely because all of this reminds him of his school, but his school is gone, and he still has the last pillar arc that he's also going through, and these other schools that are hunting him down, and maybe they're here, maybe they're not. So it's just kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting. And then the other thing that I really talk about that this log in particular made me think of, and it kind of caught my eye, was that Yugen is in this really interesting dynamic. And it's an interesting dynamic that we, as role players and role play admins, kind of have to come across and deal with. And since I do a lot of martial art characters, it's kind of something that I've had to deal with as well. Of Yugen has pretty much trained his entire life. He knows how to fight. He, like I said in my last video, he is that person that understands movement, understands his body, understands, how to really hurt somebody, and he really could hurt somebody. But now he's in a space where he could try to really hurt somebody, but there are people who are performing actual miracles around him. And he says that several times, that he has not achieved that level. He's not had a spark of power. He's not had random lightning, reactions to anything. But he is trained his whole life, right? He knows, and especially in the setting that we have, like we have a whole EDF, right? We have a whole defense force designed to take down meta-human threats, and he hasn't reached that yet. And I will go out and say right now, it probably pisses him off slightly, and he's a little jealous of it. And that is perfectly okay. It's 100% okay. Because that is something that martial artists run into in this kind of setting that we have, is that my character trained their whole life. I can break boards and break bones. I'm Mr. freaking Satan. And this new character just showed up on channel, but they've been in these big events. They've got these reds, and I've existed existed as a character for a year. They've been here, a month and a half, and their character can fly and shoot energy balls, and they're learning the Gallic gun or the Final Flash. And because I haven't been that active, or because this is a side character, I can break boards really, really well. And yeah, that's something that martial artists have to come up with a way to deal with in our setting. So it's like you kind of have to balance it. And if they were to fight, I know like Ike really wants it to be like, oh well, their skill should overcome to an extent, but if someone's sitting in the back spamming energy ball, yeah, you can say like, oh, I dodged it, I deflected it, I did all this, and I'm a master of my body. But to keep it fair, you should be getting kind of hit. And yeah, there is the like, well, that's what RP energy is for, that's what this and that's what that's for. But when you look at it, right, you have a tier 1 or tier 0 fighter, and you have a tier 1 to maybe even tier 2 mage, right, who's like, hey, I just kind of showed up and I can do all this great stuff. So I do feel a little bit in here that Yugen's kind of like, damn that tiger, right? Like, this dude isn't me. He's not a martial artist. He doesn't live my life. You don't know me. But then you can perform these miracles. So I think that's really interesting. Again, I'm not saying that's how Yugen feels. I am just purely speaking on behalf of a reader of this story. And then at the end, he kind of thinks that I don't think that he thinks that Nova is the answer or Nova is the way, but he feels drawn to conflict with her, um, and shows up and pulls out his Dragon Ball and says, "Nova, I challenge you." And maybe he's thinking in his mind that he really needs to fight someone of her caliber to awaken something inside of himself, which is cool, which is fine. Um, yeah, so that's pretty much this log. I mean, a quick synopsis is that, yeah, Yugen is traveling through Nova Sanctuary and can't really find his place even among all these martial artists, and kind of just is lamenting a little bit. And at the end, he thinks that, there's another reason why he has been drawn here, and he's seeking out Nova to find out what that is, and issues a challenge with her Dragon Ball. To which Nova gracefully accepts. So, I've been Riz. Thank you for your time, and I will see you guys on the chat channel.